Processes and tools dominate today's Agile discussions, but we are devoted to the individuals and interactions that make it work. From the beginner to the veteran practitioner, we have something for you. Welcome to Agile for Humans.
All right, welcome to this week's episode of Agile for Humans. I'm your host, Ryan Ripley. Joining me tonight, longtime co-host and friend of the show, Amitai Schleier. Amitai, how are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Amitai is coming to us from Germany. He's an international traveler this month.
That's right, yes.
Also joining us, Faye Thompson, my partner in crime for many of these last few conferences and an upcoming co-keynote, dear friend and valued Agile mentor. Faye, how are you?
I am doing well this evening. How are you?
Great. Also joining us on this panel tonight, someone that I think a lot of people in the Agile community are going to be excited to hear from and hopefully get some updates from. He is still Markus Silpala. Markus, how are you, sir?
I am very well, Ryan. Thank you.
Yeah, but it's exciting.
Glad to be here.
We are glad you're here too, Markus. And hopefully we can get a quick update from you. I think, like I said, a lot of the Agile community would like to hear how you're doing. But just a fun panel tonight. Amitai, Faye, and Markus, three of my dear friends and co-conspirators in this thing we call Agile. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about Agile 2017, catch up with Amitai, Markus, and Faye, and hopefully just have a nice little conversation. Sound good?
Yep.
So, Markus, I'm going to let you decide the level of sharing and discussion, but you scared the hell out of us, my friend. And I know you didn't do it intentionally, but you had a lot of people worried, and I think a lot of people would love to hear your latest update.
I would be happy to. For the majority of people out there that weren't paying attention, I came down with a diagnosis of leukemia back in January of this year. And I'm happy to say that I am still in full remission, have been since April. And just this week, I began my third and final round of consolidation and chemotherapy. All signs point to a total cure. And I am very, very eagerly awaiting the point when my energy level returns to normal so that I can, work full work weeks again.
Yeah, it's great to hear that. It was also interesting to follow a lot of your updates. So through the whole process of first the diagnosis and then the steps to remediation and now remission, you blogged quite a bit. You posted it on Facebook quite a bit. And it was interesting how, and we'll get links to all of that in the show notes because I think the listeners will find it interesting how you actually leaned on your Agile training and your Agile practice to get through this incredibly scary and complex situation.
Yes, I didn't realize it in the moment, but I think a couple days after diagnosis, when people were asking me, "Well, how are you sort of handling this so well?" And my thought was, well, maybe I'm just in denial. But I think I'm actually exercising, being in the face of uncertainty. The diagnosis came in stages. It was whoa, something's up. I won't get into all the details here, but it was a journey of a few days between finding out I was headed to the ER and finding out that I had leukemia and finding out what subtype I had so that they could start treating it. And after the fact, I realized that I was sort of hearing my own voice when I have coached or counseled managers or other software people about, focus only on the problems that you have, dealing with uncertainty by focusing on what we know and just kind of letting ourselves get ready for what might come. I actually credit my time in the Agile space with how I was able to do that, even in the face of a potential life-threatening situation. And that was kind of a neat, kind of a, you've internalized the Agile mindset when kind of a moment.
Right. Well, it was interesting to follow. And again, just really thrilled that you got through this. And and with a great prognosis. And so happy to have you on the show. Happy to have you, out in Orlando at Agile 2017. At Agile Coach Camp, you've been able to make it to some of these events. So it's just been great being able to see you and catch up. And I'm really glad you're here, Markus.
Thank you. Me too.
Amitai, you have some updates. I think the last time you were on the show, I'm not sure if Tavi was in this world or not.
I also don't recall. There's a lot of things right now that I do not recall precisely.
Yeah, for the listeners,
the specialization of the new parent.
Exactly. For the listeners who don't know, Amitai doesn't sleep anymore.
I do, just not super well. And there's a good chance, because it's about 3:30 in the morning here in Germany, and surprisingly, Tavi has not woken up yet. There's a good chance, any minute, a very good chance, that I will drop and go change a diaper because he hasn't learned how to do it himself yet. So I got to do it.
But you hope one day he will.
Yeah, it's a step on, change your own diaper, and then maybe you don't need one. But I figure you got to learn to change your own diaper first. That's what everybody does, right?
Well, congratulations again to you, Amitai, and your wife on the arrival of Tavi. It's, I think, again, the podcast listeners, I think, were curious about how that was going, and it's just great to hear that everything's going well, and he's adorable and healthy, and just glad that you and Becky are adjusting and flourishing as parents.
We're having a wonderful time. Thank you. And I would be happy to share a link to the photos we've been publishing in the show notes as well.
We will get those.
If people want to look at a cute kid, we'll have that.
It's a great way to fix a lousy day. And so cute kids typically help. So we'll get some links to the pictures as well. Faye, what have you been up to? I know you and I are getting ready to head out on a big trip, but what's going on with you?
What's going on with me? Yeah, just coming back from Agile 2017, where I was primarily a spectator and trying to process some of the stuff I heard there, which was all good. Getting ready to head out to Agile Africa, which I'm very excited about and not at all trepidatious.
Well, you're better than me then, because trepidation has entered my mind and my behaviors lately. But yeah, that's right. Faye and I are heading out to Agile Africa here. So by the time this episode goes live, we will have been through it will be the end of day one at Agile Africa. Faye and I will be prepping for day two, where we are both co-keynoting day two at Agile Africa, and then presenting. I'm doing the No Estimates movement. And Faye, which of your wonderful talks are you presenting?
Yeah, I'm going to be talking about how neuroscience helps us build stronger teams. So just what we know about how we learn and how we interact, and maybe some, tips or tidbits on how we can go back and help our teams interact a little bit better.
Oh, it sounds awesome. So I think this is going to be a fun trip for us to reflect on a future episode. But for now, I think the big topic from this past week is Agile 2017.
Indeed.
So Markus, you were definitely around and at quite a few of the sessions. What really stood out to you at Agile 2017? I know there were some new things that they were doing. I'll perhaps comment on some of those, some really great additions to the conference. What really stood out? Were there any sessions that really got your attention, or just anything new that you learned?
I guess thinking back, I unintentionally wound up with a couple of themes. One was mob programming and Hunter Industries. Between lunchtime conversations and a couple different sessions, I connected with the folks over at Hunter, Chris Lucian, Jason Kearney, and a couple others, and just sort of absorbed a lot of their what's changed since they invented and adopted mob programming a few years ago, and how it spread throughout the organization. That was some pretty cool stuff, as well as how they've innovated on employee goal setting practices as well, by leveraging techniques from Agile retrospectives. And then the other one was a couple sessions I was in were around what's inclusion and diversity.
Oh, nice.
The very first slot I was in a workshop given by Ash Coleman, which was very eye-opening and informative. I think the title was something along the lines of what we aren't saying, or what people aren't saying. And what I learned there was, when I've been putting together job descriptions for trying to hire people in places. I am pretty sure, I have deliberately worded things to try to attract people who have the right mindset and or skill set and sort of are already sort of on the Agile boat, so to speak. But I have almost definitely excluded whole swaths of the population that I did not want to or intend to exclude. And that kind of threw me into I guess a deep thinking place, and got a lot of figuring out to do to try to balance those things.
Yeah, I believe one of the takeaways I saw come across on that talk was, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that when we perhaps put a requirement on a job description like a contributor to GitHub, what that means is that since there's only 3% of the population on GitHub, I believe, are women, what we're basically saying is we're excluding women from our hiring practices, even though that wasn't our intent. And
right.
I found that these ideas to just be fascinating. The consequences of the requirements that we set on jobs can just be incredibly limiting without even really realizing it.
Yeah. Couple of specific points that I learned there. One was that women are far less likely to even apply for jobs if they have more than just one or two requirement bullets that they don't think are a perfect match, whereas men will tend to just plow right on through. And and the reality, in my experience, is people will list requirements. Kind of the ideal candidate would have all of these, but really they're not requirements. They're hey, these would be good. And once they get you in the door for an interview, then that's where the rubber really meets the road. And a whole lot of people just don't even get that far.
Right.
If there's a huge list of requirement bullets. Other things as part of the workshop, we broke up into our tables and wrote quick job descriptions for fictional roles at a fictional company. And we shared them back and sort of figured out, okay, so who, based on how we worded things, who is that looking for and who is that not looking for? And my group was really surprised to realize that we had given a lot of people the impression that we were only looking for young, single people that are going to put in crazy hours, which was not our intent. But the way we worded it came across that way to a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a talk that I think opened a lot of eyes and really surprised people. It got a lot of activity on Twitter, and there's really a lot of talk around it right after. So really thanks for sharing that one, Markus. Faye, what stood out to you? You know, which sessions did you sit in, and what really resonated?
I think the thing I came away with enjoying the most was the Audacious Salon, which was a new addition last year that Agile Alliance added to the schedule. And it's really intended to be a space for those deeper talks, or not really about tools and techniques or kind of nuts and bolts, but just, I guess, deeper philosophical discussions about Agile, and sometimes the thornier discussions. And a couple of the sessions I went to were just that, like deep dives into the awkward things that we don't want to talk about. And I probably left there, with the most food for thought from those sessions. And actually, one of the best sessions I attended was the Audacious Salon Agile No Complaints. Let's talk only about the good stuff. And it was a fishbowl session in which individuals got up and shared at least, some one positive thing that's happened as a result of the Agile mindset for them, whether it's in their personal life or their professional life. And it was really so just heartwarming and profound to be in that room with all of those people and hear about how their lives have been changed. And in fact, we enjoyed it so much. I was in that session. I know, Markus, you were in there, and Joe Astolfi from here in Central Ohio was in there with me. And we just loved the format so much, we brought it back, and we're going to do it at our own co-op meeting this month. Just invite people to share their positive experiences. So yeah, I've been mulling on that one for a while. I think the other thing I took away too was somebody mentioned kind of, I think in sort of an offhanded way, about they had overheard someone say that the Agile Alliance Conference had become too much about the touchy-feely things and not enough about the nuts and bolts of how to do Agile. And I just thought that was really interesting and slightly humorous because, first of all, the whole humans and individuals and interactions thing is the very first thing that's listed in the whole in the Agile values. And then I don't know about everybody else, but for me, that is the hardest part, the whole part where you inject human beings into this whole paradigm. So in my mind, we need more of those sessions than anything else. So that's kind of what I've been mulling over since then.
Yeah, I agree. The Audacious Salons were such a wonderful addition. I think George Dinwiddie did a great job with his one on positive things about Agile. Derek Wade and Paul Boos had their Brambles session as one of the Audacious Salons, where you talked about one of the scenarios was certifications, for or against, and trying to have a conversation in a civil way about certifications or scaling Agile or things like that. They picked intentionally provocative topics and had teams work through them in groups without some of the conflict that you might see on social media. And it was really a fascinating experience trying to work through some of these. And what's just interesting is a lot of us have such very strong emotional and just strong opinions about these things, and to be able to work through them was a lot of fun. Go ahead.
I appreciate everyone's play acting abilities in that session. I think everyone committed to their parts very well.
Yeah, and at the end, what was interesting was we found ways to agree. So a lot of people, like the certification discussion, for example, it's been a topic on the show. It's something that our good friend Tim Ottinger has been posting about lately. I'll get a link to the show about his latest on his views on certifications. But by the end, even people who were adamantly against were finding ways to agree that perhaps there could be some value just in the learnings, like the journey of getting a certification, and the fact that someone took an initiative, and the fact that there was a learning process that they intentionally went through, and that it wasn't about the cert, it was about gaining knowledge and continuous learning, and just the ability to find common ground on some of these very touchy topics. It was really heartwarming to see that too. So I think Paul and Derek did a great job pulling that forward. Another thing that, I think Tricia Broderick did a great job with the conference this year, and always grateful to her and her organizational team for, this is a massive undertaking. I think most of you know we're doing the Agile Coaching Summit in Chicago. Ben Kopel and I are putting that together in September. And quite honestly, this is there's a maximum of 75 tickets we've made available. It's a much smaller endeavor, and it's still a ton of work. And then when I think about what Tricia and her team, what they do to get 2,500, 3,000 Agilists in Orlando with 19 different tracks and a few hundred talks and speakers, and it's just a monumental effort, and really always appreciative of the work that she and her team does. But what they did different this year that I thought was wonderful, and I think Brian Button and a few others had a big role in this as well, along with the Agile Alliance Board, was their focus on the code of conduct. And they really made that front and center, and they made it clear that this was important, that it would be upheld, and that it would be taken seriously at all times. And I thought that was just a great step forward for the conference, and I think it created an additional sense of safety that I think was just something that I think they felt was important, and they really showed that through action. So other than that, I'm trying to think through the sessions that I attended. Woody Zuhl came up with another talk, and I wasn't. I'm always a fan of what Woody has to say. It's great to get a peek into his view of the world. But what he came up with, his talk was 0 to 60 in 19 years, and it's a talk about, or how to go from 0 to 60 in only 19 years, and it's how a path to accelerated learning on the path to Agile. And just talking about chaos within the randomness, and how we try to find patterns where they may not be, and all of our biases and things that go into us either learning or blocking us from agility. And it was really just a fascinating walk through human psychology, the way people work, complex systems. He's got another great talk that he's just knocking out of the park. And I was really happy to be able to sit through that and see him just come up with another great set of ideas that I hope more people see. It's a great talk about how we can try to be just a little bit better with his his excellent view of the world. So that one was a lot of fun. And of course, the stalwart sessions, which I think are a lot of fun to go to. Got to see Ron Jeffries and Chet Hendrickson take questions and had certainly the honor and privilege of posing a few questions to them about Scrum, and got some really fascinating answers back. So just a great experience. And again, I think it's wonderful what they've put together. The tracks, there's a lot of tracks, there's a lot of options. And so regardless of your interest on any particular day, there's something there for you. They're always innovating, either with Audacious Salons or the Stalwart Sessions, and even the mix of new and seasoned speakers. And I mean, just a really, really fun week. I don't know about all of you, but I've actually find that even some of the lunch tracks and the hallway track were especially excellent this year too.
Always one of my favorites, the hallway track.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love the placement of the open jam this year because it was in a high traffic area, and I think we just had a lot more stop and chat unexpectedly kind of conversations that way. Agreed.
There were a lot of things where conversations would maybe start in a session and then they'd continue in the hallway or at lunch, and I saw a lot of people connecting with other people in the hallways. And that made me happy. I know I've been around the scene a long time when I see someone that I know walking over and introducing someone else that I know to a third person that I know. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh, yeah, that's a great connection to make.
Hey, everybody, Ryan Ripley here. We're going to take a quick second here to get a great message from TechWell and their upcoming Agile Dev East conference. When we come back, more with Amitai, Faye, and Markus about Agile 2017 and a few other fun topics. Looking for a conference that gives you customized learning options to explore Agile and beyond? Attend Agile Dev East, the premier Agile event taking place November 5th through the 10th in Orlando, Florida, covering the latest techniques and topics no matter your level of adoption. Immerse yourself in hot topics such as Agile and Lean development principles and practices, scaled Agile development, Agile teams and leadership, digital transformation, and more. As an added bonus, the event is co-located with Better Software and DevOps East conferences. Your one registration automatically gives you access to all three programs. This means you can choose from over 100 learning and networking opportunities to build a customized week of learning that fits you and your organization's specific needs. Be inspired by veteran keynote speakers, in-depth tutorials, topically driven concurrent sessions, networking events, and more to develop skills, supercharge knowledge, and re-energize your career growth. Explore the program at well.tc/agile. Agile for Humans listeners, use the code AgileDev to receive up to $200 off any registration package over $800. Visit well.tc/agile, use the code AgileDev, and I hope to see you there. So Amitai, from your perspective, so I think you had to watch a lot of this from Twitter as you visit family across the pond. You know, what were some of the things that you took in watching from afar?
Well, the biggest thing is I've never actually been to the big Agile conference, and I thought maybe this would be the year, but then we found out that's when the baby was coming. So I guess I'm pretty accustomed at this point to following it on Twitter and not otherwise. But something that really caught my eye and that caught my ear again just now when Faye was talking about the appreciation sessions, I can just imagine how satisfying that would have been to be in. And I appreciate whoever put that together and whoever went and offered their appreciation, because that's the kind of conversation I think we don't have enough of. And I'd like to offer a little bit now. I appreciate you, Ryan, for providing this venue and other related venues, like the meetup in Chicago, the conference, I guess you'd call it, the summit, that I probably won't be able to make it to, and related discussion forums around this group, and the platform for people who are interested in Agile and want to bounce ideas around to have a way to do it. So thank you for that. I'm very appreciative, especially now that I'm not working intentionally. I'm very happy about that. At some point that'll change, but I'm really enjoying the time with my family, and I'm not trying to travel except for when it's to go to family. And so the opportunity to have these conversations in a professional mode is sort of a respite from wiping a baby's butt on the one hand, and also some way to keep my foot, in the water for this world that I care so much about. So I appreciate you, Ryan, for providing this for me.
Thank you. I certainly appreciate you saying that. And this is fun to do, and it's getting to connect with all of you that makes this fun for me. So I appreciate each and every person who's willing to come on the show and share their truth and their story. And Amitai, you've been a great co-pilot and friend through this whole thing. So the appreciation is always mutual. And I wasn't expecting that. Thanks.
Surprise. I really do hope that I can make it out to the big Agile Conference next year. I really did hope that this year, like I said. But it seems odd for someone who cares about these ideas as much as I do to never have taken part in that. It's just that, I came kind of late to this party. I'm still trying to figure out where all the fun rooms are. And it just hasn't worked out. And, part of it, we've probably talked about this before. I'm sure we have. That, and in fact, a little earlier on this show, that the big Agile Conference maybe self-selects away from people who have their feet on the ground delivering and know the details of how that works, which may be why the Agile Alliance has this second conference that they've been doing, the Tech Conference, which is separate and selects for different kinds of people. And I've been to that both times very happily. So maybe that says more about me than it does about anything else, that I'll move things aside to make sure that I get to the Tech Conference. And it's a little harder for me to justify to myself the cost, the size. I'm an introvert. It sounds incredibly overwhelming. And then not necessarily to get a ton of hands-on technical learning from doing it. It's a tougher equation for me. But when I can follow it on Twitter the way that you guys have so carefully documented what you're doing as you're doing it, it makes me think that it could be worth it. It probably is worth it. Next year, we'll see.
That I hope you make it out there, but I will not be at the next one. I have a family obligation that's been scheduled during that week. So if your first one will be probably the first one in a few years I've missed.
So I think this is the grand opportunity. Amitai, you've got 1 year to figure out how to make a Ryan Ripley disguise for yourself. So Ryan can still go to the big Agile Conference in 2018.
No, it's interesting how there is that split between the tech and the individuals and interactions side of the conferences, and I'm not sure what led to that. I see it in some other conferences that I speak at, and where the tech track is not as popular for some reason or another. So I think it was actually good that they pulled that apart, and they've got a concentrated group of engineers and developers and testers who go to the more technical conference. But at the same time, you would hope that at some point they would converge, that we would get because it's almost like, for some reason I always think back to Scrum, and this will get me laughed at in some circles, but the first book that Ken Schwaber published with Mike Beadle, XP was included. And so Scrum and XP were together. And then as things went on, those two ideas, it's not that Scrum excludes XP, but it's silent on it in future books and in the actual Scrum guide. But it's interesting how they start together and these things diverge. And I wonder if that's a trend, or if I'm just trying to make a trend, or if my bias is trying to confirm some thinking that I have. But it's just interesting how these things tend to separate. But perhaps the next big thing is finding a way to bring those things back together.
Yeah, I would say this year, I don't know if there were fewer deep technical tracks or sessions than before. I think they were there. None of them grabbed my attention, so I didn't attend very many of them this year.
Yeah.
Popped into one of the mob programming ones, but in past years, I've generally found that despite all the conventional wisdom and word on the street, almost every slot there would be 2 and sometimes 3 different technical sessions that that I'd have to choose, and so I could get a nice dose of tech during that week. In amongst all of the individuals and interactions bits. I would guess that there's probably less, partly because now there's a separate tech conference that Amitai mentioned. And it's worth thinking back, the origin of the big Agile conference. The first one was Agile 2005. And that was the convergence of what used to be two separate conferences. I don't remember the exact names, but one of them was an XP conference and the other was an Agile conference.
Okay.
And one was something universe and the other one, it was like maybe XP year number and then Agile universe, or XP universe and Agile year number. I forget, but they, in 2005, they combined them in Denver and they've been combined ever since. And I think the focus has been more and more on the coachy, scrum mastery, product ownery things over time. And I think part of that too is that there's as the Agile movement has gone mainstream, there are certified Scrum Master classes and certified Scrum Product Owner classes. And there are a whole bunch of people whose job description, project manager, whoever, maybe product manager, depending on the company, who don't really have a place in the nomenclature of the popular Agile practices. I mean, notably Scrum. And so you've got all these people that were project managers that then move into like a PO or an SM type of a slot in the Agile world. So now they've got a natural in to start going to these conferences so that they can learn this new role. Whereas the engineers are still engineers, or they're still engineers or developers. And I think this massive body of the formerly project managers, now Scrum Masters and product owners, combined with engineers not really having a mapping, that they don't necessarily realize their roles any different, has sort of made for this sense that Agile is more of a process and people thing than it is a technical thing. Whereas really,
and to add to that,
properly,
the people that spend the money on the tickets may not be the engineers. People with the budgets are more likely to be the people who are the future Scrum Masters or product owners. And they may not yet understand until after they've gone to enough Agile conferences how much work is involved on the part of the developers to adjust to this new reality, because they maybe didn't understand the work that well to begin with. So the people who would make the choice whether to send a developer or not may not see the need because they don't see much about it at all.
Well, there's that, and then there's you're not only paying for the developer to be there, then that's time you're paying them not to be at work, and that's a sensitive topic.
Whereas if the Scrum Master isn't at work, that doesn't cost much.
So anything else about Agile 17 that stood out that we want to cover? Or
I'd love to hear Ryan and Faye, who were also there. What was your favorite keynote? So there are 3 keynotes at the Agile conference: the opener, the closer, and then kind of the midweek one on Wednesday. And I loved them all.
Yeah, so I actually I flew out Friday, so I missed the closing keynote, which I was able to follow on the plane a little bit, and it looked amazing on Twitter. It seemed like it was really an antidote to imposter syndrome. Just such a wonderful, empowering talk that I really wish I'd actually scheduled a little different. The reason I actually scheduled a little different, though, is that I attended the Women in Agile event on Sunday, and so shifted my plan so I could get back home after a reasonable amount of time. But really regret missing that keynote. I'd have to say, David Marquette's opening keynote was just excellent. The way that he expressed intent over commands was just fascinating, showing the difference between red and blue work. His use of audience interaction, just a good mix of humor and just legitimate skill and knowledge. This is a person who, commander of a submarine, of a nuclear submarine, and turned around one of the lowest performing sub-teams into one of the top performing by basically deciding to never give an order again. And I thought that was just such a fascinating way to approach it. So if it can work on a nuclear submarine, it can probably work in our organizations. But I thought his opening keynote was just phenomenal.
Yeah, I would second that. Yeah, it certainly takes all the wind out of the argument that, our people need to be told what to do, right? If it can be accomplished inside the the U.S. military, then it might work in your office space as well. And I absolutely want to second the your comments on Denise Jacobs. I was there. She was amazing. She was incredibly real and relatable and gave very concrete tips for overcoming that inner critic that everyone has. And just for really talking yourself through that so that it no longer impedes you. Yeah, she was amazing. And she was everything I love in a keynote, well, because clearly she had participated in the conference throughout the week and had learned herself. So that was really refreshing to see. I like to see that in conference keynotes, so that they're interested in what their peers have to say and what they can learn from it as well.
Yeah, she I think I even tweeted about this at the time. A bunch of her presentation slides featured pictures that she had taken during the conference. And she did that in the closing keynote. She really incorporated her week's learning and experience into the talk. And that probably helped the audience really connect with it too.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think of somebody who, is in her position. She's giving keynotes all the time, and she's still battling the same voices, and she's just developed a nice toolkit of tools to help herself through it, and she's thankfully willing to share that with the rest of us.
Agreed.
Yeah, the other keynote that I really enjoyed, there's actually a couple during the Women in Agile session, and so this is the second year they've done the Women in Agile event before the big conf starts. It was on Sunday. So Natalie Warnert, Eric Willicke, Jenny Tarwater, a few others on the organizational team put together just a wonderful event about empowering women in tech from an Agile perspective. So astronaut Abby is an aspiring astronaut. She's a millennial who's now 20, but since I believe the age of 8 or 9, she's wanted to be an astronaut. She's now an intern, I think, at Kennedy Space Station. But astronaut Abby, and her actual name, her name is Abigail Harrison, and just gave a keynote about how at I believe the age of 19 started a nonprofit organization called the Mars Generation that supports just kids learning STEM, and it's just incredibly impressive. She's 20 years old now, attending Wesley College, has a nonprofit aimed at empowering women and children and everyone around STEM education. She studies astrobiology and Russian, wants to go right into a PhD program, still determined to become an astronaut. Just such a motivated and powerful young woman, and just gave a wonderful keynote. Following that, I had the honor to be a mentor to a lightning keynoter. So Susan was a new speaker, and so she was offered the opportunity to do a 7-minute lightning keynote. And so I worked with her over the past month or so, and she just did an amazing job. So I owe, and I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, my speaking career to Diane Zajac. So she sat down with me, showed me the ropes, helped me structure a talk, and got me going, made some connections, and sent me on my way. And it's turned into co-keynoting with Faye in South Africa this next week. And so it's just been a huge empowering thing for me. And so it was really just a thrill to be able to pay that forward to Susan. She did an outstanding job. I think we're going to see her and many of the others who did the lightning keynotes at many other conferences. Just a really great event. And a great message from Abigail from Abigail Harrison. Great sessions and workshops. There's basically an open space around empowering people in Agile and tech, learning how to become a better partner to diversity and inclusion, and really just a really eye-opening and powerful event. So, thanks to the Agile Alliance and Natalie Warnert especially for making that happen, and for the opportunity to not only see Abigail Harrison give her keynote, but to be a mentor to Susan and to help her get her speaking career started too.
Can I add a shout out for the men who were able to come and participate in that? And I know it doesn't fit with everybody's schedule, but first of all, I understand there were a lot of men who didn't understand that the Women in Agile conference was open to everyone. And so now it is open to everyone, and everyone is welcome and encouraged to attend. And I just really appreciate the support that we got from everyone there. And to call out someone specifically, I want to thank Declan Whalen for convening a session about how allies can help people who are in any kind of marginalized group, really, not just women, but any kind of group, how allies can help. What can they do differently in their day-to-day lives to show support, to lend support? And I think we got a lot of great ideas coming out of that.
That's cool. I hadn't heard about that session. I did attend the Women in Agile last year, and I was really sad to miss it this year. I would recommend to women and men all over the attendee space to try to catch it next year. It's definitely worthwhile.
I was impressed, honestly, that there's probably 10 to 15% of the audience was male, and I think everyone was just focused on that empowering message that the organizers put forward. I know Chris Merman, a good friend of the show, he and I spent a lot of time promoting and trying to get quite a few people to come to this event. He did a great blog post that got retweeted by the Agile Alliance. We did a couple of podcast episodes with Natalie. I hope that we continue to see this event grow. So year over year, they've increased attendance. They've increased not only overall attendance, but male participation. It's just a great opportunity to get everyone together to, first of all, bring awareness to some of the issues in the community, and then also to have everyone come together and work on positive solutions and ways to move forward. So we'll continue to support that event, and we'll have Natalie back at some point to talk about, or to perhaps debrief on her experience and what she thought. But really cool event. So between the Women in Agile event, the focus on the code of conduct, and a lot of these other things we've talked about, it's really the Agile Alliance has really stepped up, I think, with the diversity, inclusion, and safety aspects to the conference that I just, we just can't say enough good things about. We lost Amitai. I wonder if he's changing a diaper.
He is. He texted us. Yep. He said, friends, I have been called to the land of the midnight diaper, must drop.
Got it. So we'll wish Amitai farewell. You know what? At this point, I think we may have hit our time box.
Just one more appreciation for the open community that we work in, and how I learn so much from everyone all the time. I'm just so appreciative of that. And I cannot even fully appreciate everything that I've learned so far. So thank you to everyone.
Yeah, that is, it's just fun. It's a fun week. And so if you've never been to the Big Conf, Agile 2018 is in San Diego. If you can start planning ahead, the dates are posted. We'll get a link in the show notes. It's a great opportunity to learn from a lot of people. And what's fun is you can sit down at a table with a group of strangers, and suddenly you're talking about things and they're sharing their techniques, and suddenly you've learned so much, and it was just lunch. And then you've got more sessions to go to. And if you get a chance to meet some of the great people there, like Markus and Faye, who are just very giving with their time, and then you run into George Dinwiddie and Tim Ottinger and Esther Derby, Ron Jeffries. They're all sitting in the hallway, open to conversation. And so you have access to, we read all of their books, right? So these are the people that have put out the books that we've all come up on, and they're sitting out in the hallway happy to talk. It's just that great giving, open kind of vibe that the community has. It's just really fun to see. And so if you've never been, highly recommend it. And hopefully we'll see many of the Agile for Humans listeners at future conferences.
In addition to agreeing with that, a couple tips for first-time attendees or people thinking about it. It can be overwhelming, as Amitai mentioned. It is a lot of people, and it's a lot of stuff going on. One thing that can really help is if you manage to get there early and attend something that happens just before it, such as the Women in Agile session, or there was some talk of doing like an Agile coach camp or technical coach camp or something before. I know a couple of years ago, Coach Camp happened the weekend right before the big Agile conference. And anecdotally, people who go to an event right beforehand really gain something where they can leverage all the social connections, because they get to know a small set of people over that weekend, and then they have a built-in sort of crowd that they can mingle with, and then extend out from during the big event. So yes, highly recommend it. Highly recommend catching something beforehand if you can.
Yeah, and agreed on Amitai's point about it. It can possibly be overwhelming, that's for sure. But there's definitely ways of managing that. And I'm laughing because so many people who attend, who I know, would classify themselves as introverted or, just needing an energy boost, and everyone's sympathetic to that. So there are ways to manage that. There's always people who are looking for, small conversations or just quiet time. Everyone there gets that. So I wouldn't shy away from it simply because it's so large.
The best tip I ever got on that front was stopping and doing a nap somewhere around Tuesday or Wednesday, just taking a couple hours and just relaxing, because there is just so much going on. But everyone's different, and there's a ton of people there to help. The first day, the new attendee session is invaluable. So I think that's a great tip too. But just check it out. It's a great place to find plenty of Agilists and plenty of people to learn from, and can't recommend it enough. I think at this point, but we'll wrap it there. Markus, floor is yours. Yes. What do you have going on? What would you like to promote? How can the listeners continue the conversation with you?
Couple of ways. If they want to, my most active space online is Twitter, and that is M Silpala, or MSILPALA. I recommend going to the show notes to get it, because it's kind of a mouthful to spell over the air. I also have a blog, which Ryan mentioned at the beginning. I started the blog. I've been meaning to for 10 years, and I finally started it while I was fighting cancer, and I have Amitai to thank for this, because he graciously offered to create a blog for me out of my Facebook posts so that non-Facebook people could see it too. And then I, of course, said, no, I want to do it. So then I did it. And that is at Markus, Markus .Silpala, SILPALA.com. And so far, it is very heavily weighted towards the cancer category, because as Ryan mentioned, that's how I was getting the word out and updates on myself during the dark months. But I endeavor to get more software category entries in there and tip the scales in that direction over the next year.
Excellent. Looking forward to it, Markus. Faye, how about you? How can people interact, communicate, and keep up with you?
I'm with Markus. I spend probably most of my social media interaction on Twitter. You can find me at Agile Faye. Faye spelled correctly is Faye. Not any of those other inferior spellings that you might have heard. You mentioned, actually, the week of August 21st, we will be at Agile Africa in Johannesburg, and I am very much looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to all the new people we're going to meet and hearing about the Agile scene in South Africa. After that, the end of September, I'll be at the Columbus IIBA Professional Development Day. So if you're in Central Ohio and going to be around there, please come introduce yourself. I love meeting new people. And then in November, I will be at Better Software East in Orlando. So I know many of your listeners will be there. So again, please come up and say hi.
That sounds great. And for those not aware, Faye is a part of the COHA organization that puts on the Path to Agility conference that we talk about regularly. So she's right front and center of that endeavor, and is very much responsible for the great conference that has become. So Faye, we'll go ahead and plug that for you in the show notes as well, because we'd love to see a lot of people submit talks and attend in Columbus next year too.
Likewise. Yeah, absolutely. It's always the week before Memorial Day.
Great. So as for me, your host, Ryan Ripley, as Faye mentioned, while you're listening to this, it's very likely that we'll be in Johannesburg presenting and co-keynoting and really checking out the Agile scene there. So we'll be sure to come back and do an episode and report in on how that went. Otherwise, just getting a lot of great emails about past shows that we'll address in upcoming episodes. A lot of great comments on Twitter. Just really appreciative to the listening community. I think this is now a community of listeners. It's just overwhelming. We got a lot of great comments at Agile 2017 about the show. A lot of great comments coming in from Twitter, the Facebook page, email, and just want to say thank you. It is incredibly humbling to see the download numbers go up every month. You all out there are making Agile for Humans the top Agile podcast on iTunes, and I just cannot thank you enough for the support and how much you share with me and with others about the show and how it's impacting your lives and your career. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for listening. That's all we have this week. Thank you as always for listening to the show, and everyone out there, please have a great night.
Thanks for listening to Agile for Humans. Let's keep the conversation going. Drop us a question on Twitter @AgileForHumans or visit agileforhumans.com.